What's up, guys? In this video, I just want to talk about why healthcare is getting so expensive. So, there's a lot in the news right now about how healthcare premiums, which are already the highest in the US of any developed nation, are set to rise by approximately 30% by the end of the year. And it's causing a lot of political drama as usual, as many people are blaming Trump and his administration and rich billionaires and, kind of all the usual stuff that we hear. But I wanted to bring up from a different angle. The point of my channel is not just to regurgitate the news that you hear everywhere else, is to give my own opinion from my experiences and, other things that the media usually doesn't talk about that we may find important. So I am in Post Falls, Idaho. Usually the traffic's pretty short around here. I'm going to try and find a quieter spot, but northern Idaho, it's a beautiful place if you haven't noticed. But going back to healthcare, why is it so expensive? Well, some things I noticed, this is a quick story, right? I remember that, now I haven't been a patient in a hospital in a long time, like almost practically never, to be honest. Since I was like 14, I had appendicitis. And so I had to get my appendix removed. But besides that, I've never spent a night overnight in a hospital. And so I've been in hospitals to visit other people, though. And one thing I noticed is, and this was after doing a lot of my own research and learning about health, and I did a lot of research into health care in like the early 1900s, and because it was around like the 1930s really that it started to really become corporate, and a lot of the corruption that we see these days really set in. And by that I mean drug companies like started to balloon, chiropractors, natural health people started getting basically like butted out of the system by giant companies. And if you fast forward to today, the whole system is hopelessly corrupt and is basically just based off of drugs and surgeries. And oftentimes it's going to start to be automated with AI. And so it just gets to the point where the doctor will look up, almost essentially Google your symptoms and then just prescribe a drug. But I digress. Back in the 30s, there was a lot more of a private, like unregulated type of healthcare, where there was a lot of small clinics, small practices, family practices, things like that, small amounts of employees. And they would have to be in competition with each other, just like local shops around any city would have to be. So if one guy was charging $200 to work on your broken leg, and I'm just making these numbers up, the numbers really don't matter in the video for now, but let's say someone charged $200 to work on your broken leg, and then someone else was charging like $300, and someone else was charging $500. The market, people would catch wind of this, and generally the guy that could offer the best service for the best price, not necessarily just the cheapest price, right? Because you don't want to go to the guy that's charging you $20 and doesn't know what he's doing. But what I mean by this is there was a lot of competition, and there wasn't health insurance yet. So they knew that they couldn't just charge whatever they want, and knowing that insurance companies would foot the bill, right? Which is what happens today now, which is one reason why it's so expensive, is because a lot of these doctors today will charge you. I don't even have to say this. If you've gone to the doctor and had even the most minute type of intervention, even just an x-ray, they'll charge you $800. It's almost, it's basically health insurance at this point, to me, is like a mafia style protection racket. You pay a lot of money per month only so that you won't get totally bankrupted if you actually have to use the system. You'll still pay out of your butt, and it'll be way too expensive and way more expensive than it should be. But you know, it's at the point where, like, if you don't have health insurance and then something happens and you like get in a car accident and you have to be in the hospital for a couple weeks, something that, you know, years ago would have been expensive, but it wouldn't have just ruined you financially immediately. Something like that today could run into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Depending on the surgeries that they have to do, it could be over $1 million. And so that's one reason why health insurance, and in general, but what I mean by that story, going back to it, it's not really about the health insurance as much as it's about these small practices were everywhere. They were small clinics, probably about the size of a church, right? Some were bigger than others, but we didn't have these leviathans that you see today. Like, I was driving through Spokane, and they have, I think it's a Swedish medical center. It's like a small city. There's got to be 10 buildings in there, each of them, not including the parking garages, that are like at least 10 stories tall. And that's one of the things I've been reading about recently, because I did some research to brush up before this video, is we mistake a lot of times in our country technology for technology's sake. Like, the average person will see these massive hospitals and they'll be like, wow, you know, they must have the state-of-the-art equipment, the best doctors, the best beds, everything. Oh my gosh, redundancies, nothing can go wrong in there. They're ready for anything. Helicopter pads, you name it. And in a way, this may be true. But what's also true is that costs a ton of money. Some of these hospitals cost over $1 billion to create now, to build. $1 billion to build a hospital, something that's supposed to help the community. And they spring up everywhere. So that's one reason that our costs are so high, is that the cost of this equipment, these industries, an MRI machine, a CAT scan machine, X-ray machines, not to mention, again, the most corrupt drug companies, the worst companies that in existence, in my opinion, the absolute worst. I mean, they, for the 5% that they do that's good, the other 95% is just a giant scam. And so when I was visiting my friend's son, who was in the hospital, he has a very special type of muscular dystrophy where he only has like 15% of his muscular function, so he's in a wheelchair, and I mean, it's a serious condition. And sometimes even if he gets like a runny nose, you know, things we take for granted, like having a cough, it can be like life-threatening for him. So he's in the hospital. I went to visit, and they had to run some interesting procedures. But I'm looking around this room, and I was just like stunned. There was just so much equipment, and I guarantee you, like, a large portion of it almost probably never even gets used, right? But in that room was at least $1 million worth of equipment. Now, I don't think it should cost $1 million for that much stuff. This is what happens in a bloated Western economy such as ours, is that things are completely overpriced. Which leads me into another aspect of this, which is the fact that the government funds a lot of this through government health care. And a lot of people, again, are very politicized on this topic. They want universal health care like a country like Sweden. I don't think these people understand too much about what they're talking about, because the fact of the matter is we have a gigantic country, not the largest in the world, not really by far, but not far behind either. You look at a country like Norway or Sweden. Norway has like 6 million people. We have more people that live in New York City than a lot of these countries with universal health care. So to try and scale that kind of stuff into a country of like at least 350 million, and with all the immigration, let us say, who knows how many are actually here, right? Upwards of 400 million people. It's very hard to just have universal healthcare. I'm going to have some solutions here at the end too, guys. But it's important that we frame this, because people are looking to the government. That's kind of the next thing. People are looking to the government to save them, which they've been programmed to do. It's sad to say, but you see it everywhere. On social media, in real life, people are just like, they're at odds with their fellow human beings. And everyone is thinking that red team or blue team is going to save them. And, it would be nice if our government and our public servants, as they're called, which really we're their slaves. They're not really a servant of anyone, except for we're their servants, apparently, that we pay. But they it would be nice if they would make major moves on this. They do small things like, they try to address overpricing of drugs, or companies not covering people for insurance, insurance companies choosing not to cover certain procedures, and then the person that paid all that money into health insurance just gets left to rot, which happens more than you would think. But so what I'm saying is, like, for more problems than I can imagine, the government is not the answer. In fact, I believe the government is the problem more often than not. But going back to these ballooning costs, during 2020, and we all know about that, and lockdowns, etc., there was a lot of nurses. I would meet nurses, or people that knew nurses, or were married to nurses, or etc., who were saying like they were getting like all this overtime, and sometimes it was like they ended up getting paid extra, like $5,000 or $6,000 a week. Now, I'm not here to bash on nurses, but I think a lot of people in the medical industry are very overpaid. They're actually overworked and overpaid. And I know that'll piss you off if you are a nurse. I don't really care. It's not the point of this channel. It's not to coddle people. It's just my opinion. But worse than that is, it's always kind of a, what's the term, I guess? It's always kind of a running joke that, doctors make so much money. They're out on the golf course. I mean, it's a lucrative job. Like, a lot of women are going, oh, my husband's a doctor. They do make a lot of money. They make a lot of money. And some of them deserve it. Very few deserve it. General physicians, I don't think, deserve it. A lot of these guys are just drug salesmen at this point. But what I'm saying is exorbitant payrolls, right? And lack of follow through and lack of results in terms of not the premise of this video, but the fact that our country continues to get more and more unhealthy pretty much every single year, every demographic, every conceivable illness. Definitely lifestyle related ones, obesity, type 2 diabetes. I would say even a lot of digestive issues. even a lot of autoimmune conditions. Now, people will argue with me that they're not lifestyle related. I beg to differ. Just because you don't know what's causing it doesn't excuse the fact that it's your decision that you're doing the thing that's causing it. Mainly poor diet, lack of exercise, lack of knowledge about health in general. But going back to healthcare costs are rising. Now let's look at the solutions. My number one solution for all of these things, and this is common sense, is that you should strive to be the healthiest version of yourself. If more people did this, just with the simplest things, not eating totally processed, crappy foods, drinking cleaner water, drinking more water, having more psychological habits, sleeping better, obviously exercise, weight training, all these things that improve our health, heart health. Not only are you going to be less likely to go to the hospital, so you'll be less likely to have to spend all this money on medical care, because regardless of whether insurance covers it or not, you're still going to have to pay quite a bit if you're always going to the doctor. It adds up. Plus it's a waste of time and all that. You're going to be less likely to use medications. For instance, I do not use any medications, never have. I don't even use Tylenol. I believe there's a lot of natural fixes for all of these things, but that's for another video. But naturally, this should be common sense that if you want to be healthy so that you can avoid the medical system, except for the acute issues, which is what our medical system should be there for in the first place. Accidents, broken bones, strange, weird illnesses that leave you bedridden, parasites, but a lot of times strokes, things that happen with old age as well. Obviously, we need the healthcare system there for that. But 90% of the cost of our healthcare system in terms of like practical use is basically just taking care of unhealthy people that have not made the right choices for whatever reason, and end up taking a lot of medications, and of course those medications have side effects, so you end up getting sicker over time. They don't change the original habits, and the rest is history. But not only that, but if less people, if people are more healthy in general, just if people are leaner, stronger, healthier, then again, we're not dumping so much money into the healthcare system, which would save, I can't even put a number on how much it would save. Just imagine if like 70, let's even go light, 75% of type 2 diabetics fix their type 2 diabetes, which you can naturally. Don't listen to what anyone else will say. You can fix it naturally. 75% of them were able to get off of metformin or get off of any diabetic drugs, any of these GLP drugs. Sometimes they even use weight loss drugs, Ozempic, blah, 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 blah. Obesity and diabetes. Just if 75% of people could fix that naturally, all that money wouldn't be going into the system. See, what happens is we get what we deserve a lot of times. And with the way our health insurance works, a lot of people are going in there and they're getting their blood thinner or their diabetes medication. I'm talking about type 2 and type 1 too, so lay off in the comments. You should know the difference between the two anyway. Not talking about type 1, I'm talking about preventable type 2. But they don't realize that like a lot of these drugs are billed. That's the key thing. They're billed at like over $1,000 a month. they're not worth that much. They don't cost nearly a fraction of a percent that much to make, which is why drug companies are so outlandishly rich. They make these things for super, super duper cheap, and then they charge extraordinary amounts for them, but it gets covered under insurance. So the person that's taking it, doesn't really see the bigger picture, just kind of washes their hand of the whole thing. But we all end up paying it through our health insurance premiums. That's a very simplistic way of how our insurance works. If you don't know this already, it's not just limited to drugs. It's limited to everything that goes on in the hospital. Whether it's X-ray machines, like think about, there's a lot of people that go in, and doctors are constantly, I'll end the video on this one, but people should know these things, that doctors are paid off commission, much like just salesmen. I know how it is to be a salesman and get paid a commission. Naturally, you want to sell a product, right? So they will promote certain activities at the medical center, whatever it may be. Maybe it's an X-ray. Maybe it's a certain injection, if you get my drift there. And people will do it, and then it gets quote unquote covered under insurance. The doctor gets a nice cut. The hospital gets a nice cut, because and then here it goes, and it just goes on and on and on and on and on. And also, you have to understand that hospitals are run like for-profit businesses now. As sad as it sounds, they need beds filled. If you're a hospital administrator and your surrounding area is getting really, really healthy, and people aren't going to the hospital overnight and staying in beds, sooner or later, up the food chain, the corporate food chain, people are going to start asking questions. Do we really need your hospital? Do we really need you to be employed here? Maybe we'll lay you off, because your hospital beds are supposed to be at X amount percentage filled, and they're only at 2/3 that, so we're operating at a loss. See, this is why I'm so disgusted with our healthcare system. And you know what? The best solution, we're not going to be able to change the system ourselves. Some people try really hard, and I just hope to educate people on how to be healthy so you don't have to get caught up in it, guys. Like, that's the thing. There's much better ways. I get called crazy all the time. Oh, Ben, blah, blah, blah. Why? Not everyone can do that. I will leave the video at this. And I've said this to many people. There's not one single person I've ever coached, whether it's fitness, nutrition, usually intertwined, a lot of times just nutrition. There's not one person I ever coached or helped, got food journals from, that was suffering from a bunch of issues, and their diet and lifestyle didn't exactly correlate to it in some way, shape, or form. Sometimes take a little bit more investigation, but nobody is eating super perfect, and I mean really perfect, and getting all these weird diseases. And if they are, then it's something that's not in their food. It could be other things, which I'll go into other videos. But anyway, guys, I just want to give the update that expect your premiums to go up. And guess what? They're going to go up next year. They're going to go up every year for the rest of your life, pretty much. So be prepared for it. Get yourself healthy. Find ways to make extra money so you can cover these things. Find better plans if you can. You have to really look at these plans. The deductible, the co-payments, what are covered, what do you really need? For me, I don't care about plans that cover drugs because I don't use them. I mean, I've drank alcohol and stuff, but pharmaceutical drugs, I mean, I do not use them. I will not use them long term. So I don't care about insurance covering that, right? For me, it's more about what if I break my leg while I'm snowboarding? That's what I'm concerned about. So guys, hope you enjoyed the video. If you can, like, subscribe to the channel, The Health Matrix. We try to make videos every day, at least 5 days a week, moving forward, talking about all the different ways that we can be healthy. You can check out my other channel, Tactical Nutrition, where I do my actual coaching. I will see you guys in the next one.